Hey guys, it's Pastor John here with Coram Deo Church. Just want to take a moment to respond to one of the questions we got from our sermon this last Sunday on Genesis 19, in which I preached on the sin of Sodom and the folly of Lot. The question is this: many of us in this area work for the federal government. How can we speak truth about the issue of homosexuality or LGBTQ when our livelihoods will all be lost if we do not accept this behavior? God will provide, but it seems irresponsible and not good stewardship to our family to speak strongly against this behavior. How can we speak the truth in this situation? And this is an incredible question, and certainly this is not the first time this question has been asked. And so, a couple things to suggest in response. The first is that we are witnessing, we're in the middle of a pretty radical cultural transformation. Most of us grew up in a cultural context situation in which we were, for the most part, free to practice our faith, to practice Christianity. There wasn't a whole lot of cultural pushback for our faith. The reality is that the global and historical experience of Christianity hasn't really been like that. What many of us have grown up in is not the norm. And today you can see whether it's the church in China or the persecution that's happening, the church in the Middle East or all around the world. What's more normal is that discipleship is costly, and that the general surrounding culture is not going to welcome Christian faith, Christian morality, Christian doctrine. And so it puts us in a weird position because what's normal for us isn't really historically normal or globally normal. And so we are having to think about things that we really haven't had to think about before, and ask questions that we really haven't been forced to ask before. And that's why questions like this are coming up, because there is such a rapid and radical transformation happening culturally regarding the issue of sexual immorality. And so I think it's important just to note that that change has happened, and we're in the middle of it, and now we're having to figure out things that we haven't had to figure out before, and that's probably going to continue to happen. So note that that's kind of the cultural moment, the context that we're in. In addressing the question specifically, I think there's one distinction to be made, and that is when an employer requires sinful action. Okay, so when your place of employment says you must do this, and whatever that is clearly forbidden in Scripture, then it's very clear what needs to happen. There needs to be a new job, and this is a very very realistic, a very costly example of what discipleship costs. Jesus told us that if we're going to follow him, we have to deny ourselves, we have to pick up our cross, and that even when that costs us family, we need to do that. And this is a very costly issue when it comes to employment. But I would say when your employer is demanding disobedience, then there is a clear situation in which it's time to look for a new job. Okay, I don't know that this is what is happening in the federal government, or I should say, I don't know that it's happening yet. So I know when it comes to not just the federal government, but also public education, there are people running education way up the ladder, way up there somewhere, that would like to see school districts promoting specific curriculum that promotes LGBTQ issues. But that's not necessarily what happens at a local level, because schools have the ability in their own districts to make decisions. And then, so you've got superintendents speaking into that, you've got local communities speaking into that. And so you might have a situation where someone in power in the state of Washington would like to see things happening in the school district, but what's actually happening in the school district is a different thing. And so you've got situations where it depends on your own setting. Is Is the situation something that is demanding you, requiring you to do something that is clearly forbidden, that God clearly forbids, that something that would be you sinning? Or is it a situation in which certain things are looked down upon, or certain things are perhaps discouraged, but not necessarily commanded or forbidden? And so I think you got to be wise and understand what is the situation. Am I being commanded to do something that God clearly forbids? And if that's the case, then it's probably time to look for a new job. Or I would guess that a lot of the situations are more of my beliefs are being discouraged, but I'm not being commanded to do something that is sinful. So I think making that distinction is important. If your employer is commanding you to sin, then you need to leave, and you may need to take legal action. I'm not an expert there, but that's certainly to consider. But I think a lot of us are going to be in situations in which uh, um, our convictions might be looked down upon, but it might not be job threatening. So I think making that distinction, what is this? Am I being commanded to sin, or am I simply just being discouraged, but I'm not being forced to do something that God forbids? So making that distinction is important. And then everything else that's gray is really, it's a gray area, and I think what it requires is thoughtful and prayerful Christians trying to figure this out. And so, as I was thinking about how do you answer this question, one of the things that came to mind is I think that we need to have a space or a place for Christians who are employed by the government, whether that's local state government with education or that's federal government with a shipyard and whatnot, a space for you to come together and to share your experiences and to share what you're struggling through, and to learn from one another and to pray for each other, because like I said at the beginning, this is really uncharted territory for most of us, and it's going to take wisdom, and it's going to take humility, and it's going to take community to figure out how to navigate these challenges together. So one thing that I guess I would suggest is maybe you need to start a group for government employees who are Christians, that can share wisdom, that can share experiences, that can pray and support each other as you navigate this ever-changing cultural context, and the ever, the pushing forward of the LGBTQ agenda. And so that's what I would start there. If you're being commanded to sin, then there's a clear line that's being crossed. If you're not being commanded to sin, then you need to be wise and discerning. And I would absolutely, I think it's time that Christians in those contexts need to come together and learn together and learn from each other, and maybe you're the one to do it. So I hope that that's helpful. If not, if it was just confusing, please do let me know. You can email me, John, Jon, at quorumdeochurch.org, and I will reply to you personally through email and see if I can do a better job at addressing what you're getting after. So thank you for asking the question, and let me know if there's anything to be helpful, and hope to see you this Sunday. All right, take care.